What up, folks? What it do? Welcome to another episode of the Best Advice Ever podcast. Yeah, with your boy, the bow-tied comedian, Mike Goodwin. Now, if you're watching this via the video, you can see things have changed tremendously. Now, if you just listen to the audio, I will try to explain what the folks are seeing that are looking at the video. I've revamped the studio look. Now, first off, I have this very incredible looking sign. Let me move to the side here. This is my logo. As you can see, refreshingly funny. It's got my name. It's got the signature bow tie and the glasses. It's tremendous. I'll have to shout out the company that created it. They did an absolutely incredible job. So I wanted to redesign my layout, and that is what we're doing right now. We're redesigning the layout, and I think I like it. This is the first time with the new digs. So hopefully you are enjoying the aesthetic of the podcast. We also have moved have started the YouTube page and are moving all the previous videos over to the new YouTube page. Just look for the Best Advice Ever and Mike Goodwin, something like that. You put that in the search and you should be able to land on the podcast page. So we're moving the podcast away from my standard comedian Mike Goodwin YouTube, because YouTube, the clips that we're showing on that is primarily comedy. As we know, the podcast can be funny, but this is not 30 minutes of me cracking jokes. This is me sharing some insight, really, as a guide or a sage, a fatherly figure, so to speak. Just celebrated my birthday on July 18th. A lot of things have happened, but one of the things that has happened, we've changed the format of the podcast, and we lead off with the best advice ever. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to lead off with the best advice ever. And I'm actually going to talk about a few things, but this is something that I'm currently reminding and telling myself in terms of advising me. So the best advice ever is simply to focus on your blessings. Focus on your blessings. I have a life in which God has blessed me tremendously. I have a family that is a blessing to me. I make a living doing something that is unfathomable. If I don't know if I were to tell 18-year-old Mike Goodwin that, hey man, you're going to be a professional stand-up comedian, I think that would have blown my mind. I think that would have sent my neurons into a frenzy. Like, I don't think that I would have been able to totally comprehend that information. But that is a blessing, right? I'm blessed to be a blessing. You know, not only am I operating in my purpose, that is a blessing to me, it also allows me to bless other people. People can come and enjoy a night of comedy, and I have to be deliberate about focusing on the blessing, because I think I might want to focus on what's the opposite of a blessing? I often want to focus on the offense. I want to focus on things that were alts to me. I want to focus on people that have done me wrong, been a stumbling block, or just not believed and had negative words. And that's kind of what I'm experiencing now, currently. As many of you know, I'm in the midst of the Big Dad Energy Tour, and I just did a run through South Carolina and North Carolina. So I did Greenville, South Carolina, Hickory, North Carolina, Greensboro, North Carolina, and Charlotte, North Carolina. And the impetus of this advice comes from all the struggle and difficulty that it took for me to get these dates to sell tickets. It's like, it's not been an easy process. And I've been doing stand-up comedy full time to this point 11 years. And maybe about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I started saying, hey, man, I want to sell some tickets. I want to start touring. I want to start going to places and saying, hey, man, Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm going to be in town. Buy your tickets. Come check me out. Chattanooga, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Florida, wherever the places would be. That was my desire, but it was, and what I thought was going to be a kind of seamless transition. Like, oh man, I'm ready to tour. I have a pretty decent social media following. I have a great word of mouth type situation. Got a pretty good email list. Hey man, let's go sell these tickets. And I got quite a bit of pushback. Got quite a bit of discouragement. I would say encouragement, discouragement, and information about how, if you're not careful, touring can be a very unsuccessful endeavor. So you gotta be very intentional, and you gotta make good decisions, and you gotta have wins and stack wins. And I just was like, hey man, let's just pick some cities that we feel fairly confident that people want to see me, and let's go do it. So there's been a tremendous amount of haggling kind of back and forth about actually doing the tour. And it made me think about, because I was explaining this to my wife recently. I need to be mindful of the blessings, and because in life, I think things that happen simultaneously. There are things that are a blessing to you, and there are things that are a challenge to you. And it's, hey man, what do you choose to spend your attention and your focus on? Hence, the best advice ever is to focus on your blessings. And so what, to give you some context of what I'm talking about, this weekend has been successful beyond my expectations. Like, I really didn't have tremendous expectations. I want to sell tickets. I want people to come out. But I didn't know exactly the numbers. And to add a little bit more context, and I've told this story, but I want to keep telling it. So it's like in my DNA. So in April, I did a theater, and I sold probably, let's say, 85 to 90% of the seats. Like we almost sold this theater out in Marietta, Georgia. It's a great night. It was a great night of comedy, great night of ticket sales, just all around a great night. That was on a Friday night in Marietta. The next morning, me and my wife had to return to South Carolina because my daughter was going to the prom. So we had to assist in the prom things. So, but I'm still on a kind of a high. Like this was my third theater, my first time in Atlanta selling, and it went very well. So I'm on this high. I'm feeling good about, man, now I knocked that out of the park. And then on the horizon, I had Tennessee, I had Zanies in Nashville, and I had Stand Up Live in Huntsville the next month in May. So that's what I was turning my attention to for the tour. And then I got an email on Monday morning. I mean, I'm feeling good. Feeling like, man, the wind is beneath my wings. I just had this great victory. I'm still in the afterglow, right? I get this email. And let me get the email. Because I read it in Charlotte. And I'm certain I probably read it to y'all. But I'm going to get this email. I get this email on Monday morning. Again, still feeling the glow. Still feeling the positivity and the energy. I'm going to read you word for word what this email said. This is what I received from my booking manager. Because he had a conversation with the owner of the Comedy Zones. The headline was Comedy Zone Dates. And it reads, need to start promoting them big time. I just talked with them. Compared to all the other shows that they have on the books through the end of August, your shows are the weakest in ticket sales for all locations. Come on, say what? What you say? What you talking to me? What you saying to me? Talk about a gut punch. Talking about knocking the wind out of your sails, man. Here I am. I'm coming off the mountaintop. I guess it's similar to Moses, man. Moses was up there spending time with the Lord. He was getting revelation, insight. He was getting to spend time with the creator of the universe. He comes back off this mountain, and the people are having a whole party down there. They have sacrificed, they have made idols, they've burnt gold and silver and metals and created idols and just down there carrying on. I don't know how he felt as he descended the mountaintop, but I felt away when I got that email and I read it. I'm talking about Monday morning, man. I still hadn't put all the checks in the bank yet. And I felt away, but I immediately saw this as an opportunity. I saw this as a blessing. Imagine the narrative if I go out here and sell these tickets. Imagine the narrative of, hey man, this guy had the lowest ticket sales in all locations through the end of August, man. This is April. So I was encouraged because I was like, hey man, I really haven't been advertising those dates. And it was the dates that I just did. It was Greenville, Hickory, Greensboro, Charlotte. And I'll talk a little bit more about what happened. But what I did do, I saw that email that would have been, and it was offensive. It did offend me. It did make me feel away. It did knock me off of my stride for a moment. But then I saw it as an opportunity, and I saw it as a blessing that, hey, I'm on their radar. And I likened this. I was telling my wife about this. Like we often talk about the athlete that goes undrafted or the late draft pick, the late round draft pick. Now this person is an all-star, and this person is a leader of their team, and they're just an outstanding face of the franchise that ended up drafting them. But you can't tell me that on draft night, hearing 59 picks, and I don't know how many picks are in a first and second round. Let's say NBA. Let's say you go, 2 rounds of picks to never hear your name. Like, you can't unfeel that. You can't unfeel all the pundits and all your flaws that they have pointed out and the reasons why a team wouldn't draft you in the first round or the second round. You hear about how your school you didn't play in a big conference, and you're undersized, and your jump shot is inconsistent. Like, you hear all of these things, and you go to work, right? And you go to work, and you bolster up these weaknesses, and you throw yourself into your craft, and you create a beautiful career. I need to go back and look. I don't know when Jimmy Buckets. What's Jimmy Butler? I don't know when he was drafted, but I feel like he's an example of that. Drafted and kind of was in the league, kind of was doing his thing, but wasn't a super duper star. A guy I think about that is similar is a guy by the name of Michael Finley. Played for the Mavericks in the latter part of his career. I think that's what he's known for, the Mavericks. But if I'm not mistaken, he may have played for Phoenix at some point. San Antonio, maybe. Don't fact check me. But Michael Finley is a guy that went late round, second round. But by the end of his career, he was very well respected, starting in the league, kind of clutch player, like had some all-star runs. And that's how I felt when I got that email. But this week, I ended up being the all-star and being the undrafted player that has made good on his opportunity. So I encourage you to stay focused, especially focus on your blessings, because they are things that are happening, even though they're challenges and obstacles, there are still blessings that are taking place and that you not only should be grateful for, but you should focus on. And that is the best advice ever for the day. Focus on your blessings. Now, I'll take the rest of this podcast to kind of talk about what I've been talking about. I just had this Comedy Zone run. What was interesting, y'all keep seeing me look down. I got a timer down here that I'm trying to keep myself in line with the time frame and not just to be rambling on and on. But this last week, I had a run with the Comedy Zone. And I've worked with the Comedy Zone over the last number of years. First, when I went full-time in comedy, I was pretty inconsistent with clubs. The club here in Columbia, I probably got the most work at because it was here in Columbia. But that has changed management a number of times. And at some point, the folks that were hiring me pretty regularly kind of transitioned out. And then I think I transitioned out of just working the club. I kind of got to the point of like, I wasn't, for the most part, they were just using me to host and feature. I headlined a couple of times in some interesting scenarios. I had to fill in for Todd Bridges one weekend because Todd Bridges came to Columbia and cussed the crowd out, and they asked him not to come back out to the comedy club. Matter of fact, shout out to Todd Bridges, great guy. I talked to him briefly when I dropped the feature off at the hotel. This week at the Comedy Zone in Charlotte, somebody had bought tickets to see Mike Epps. Mike Epps was last week, and I guess they got their calendar messed up. They bought the tickets, paid for the tickets, came to my show to see Mike Epps. Mike Epps is not here. Mike Goodwin's here. and they end up buying some Mike Goodwin tickets. We don't know the verdict because they bought the Mike Epps tickets and couldn't get a refund or nothing, and paid a pretty penny. But to come to the Mike Goodwin show, I think they played a quarter of what they paid to go to the Mike Epps show. Now, the clubs were just not accessible. Like there was a Comedy Cabana in Myrtle Beach that gave me some work. Again, here in Columbia, I got some work, and then I would do some of the Comedy Zone runs. I remember I did a run with John Chris, and it wasn't necessarily clubs. Comedy Zone had a bunch of rooms. They had a room in Augusta. We did a room in Lake Norman. There used to be a club there in this restaurant. Fort Mill had this club. It's kind of in a closet of this restaurant / music venue. Not Macon, Georgia, but the place where Fort Benning is. Where's Fort Benning? Dang, where's Fort Benning? Let's ask Siri. Siri, where is Fort Benning located? Columbus, Georgia. I guess they changed the name too to Fort Moore. Folks out here getting renamed. But Columbus, Georgia had a comedy club room called a Loft. That was a music venue also. So we did, it's like a week long run. We did like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday type deal. But I went full-time comedy in July of 2012. And again, had a lot of corporate opportunities, had a lot of church opportunities, but I didn't have a lot of clubs. Wasn't doing a lot of clubs. And the majority of my clubs, I think at that point, kind of dried up. And when I would feature and open for folks, some of those folks wasn't probably doing clubs, or for whatever reason, I wouldn't get a lot of opportunities. But a buddy of mine in town, Marty Simpson, had taken the comedy class at the Comedy Zone in Charlotte. And it was an 8-week class every Monday from 7 to 9. And he had told me basically that it was a good investment of a time. Basically, it gave him access to some club dates. And I think we might have been talking, and I might have communicated that, hey man, I'm not really getting a lot of not action in clubs. And I think he may have recommended that I take the class, or just said that, the class was a good opportunity for him to network. The club was able to see him, and then he got some work from that. So I was like, okay, I'll do it, man. So I signed up. I took this course. I took this comedy class. It was an 8-week comedy class. It's basically for beginners, people that are interested in being comedians. I'm not going to besmirch what the club is or the name of, it's just, it was a comedy class. You paid your money in 8 weeks. You did the courses, and then at the end of the 8 weeks, there's a showcase. There's a showcase on like a Friday night, I think. I didn't make the showcase because I had an actual show. So I was a full-time comedian. And I do feel a way about this experience because when I first went to the class, one of the instructors asked me, they asked not me, just asked the entire class, kind of getting a gauge of where people were on the spectrum of stand-up. Like there were some people that would like never had done it, super interested. There's some people that have done some open mics. There's some people that were, doing shows and mics, but they want to get more club access. And then you had like me, a full-time comedian, but I was a church comedian. I wasn't in clubs. So this was an opportunity for me to bridge the gap and come to clubs. So I remember the guy asking me, how much time did I have? And at the time, I probably had an hour plus of material. But I said 45 minutes. I was like, I got a good 45. And the guy laughed. He just was like, BS. You'll have 45. You're delusional, right? And I'm like, nah, man, I've been out here. I've been out here in these comedy streets. But it felt great to be able to headline the club, which 11 years ago, because I think I took that course in 2013, January 2013. I found some emails and I took that 8-week course, went up there every week, every Monday. And I worked on, one of the comedian, shout out to George Century, who featured for me at 2 locations this weekend. Great comedian, funny stuff. He was asking me like, what was it? Was it beneficial? And I think it was. I think it was another step. I think you put everything in this comedy gumbo. So I think there was some vegetables, some carrots I put in. I think there was some carrots and a little paprika, maybe a little pepper, maybe some spices. So it wasn't a fail. It went, but it didn't skyrocket me into fame and acclaim. But it was a step. It was a step in the direction. So back to this week, I sold out in Greenville, South Carolina. I sold out Greenville, and then I had very great numbers at the other locations. I don't know the numbers of Hickory, but I sold 225 tickets in Greenville. So that's all the seats. In Greensboro, I sold 174 tickets. So I'm sure that place seats maybe 225. I don't know the exact number. I think the Comedy Zone in Charlotte seats about 300 and something. I sold about 280. And Hickory, I don't know. Again, I don't know the numbers, but it was packed. And I remember when I was working with John Chris, sometimes you look at things and you say, whoa, this looks like something I've seen before. And I remember when John was starting to hit his stride, I would go out, I would come to the club and it would be folks there. Let's say the show started at 7. It would be folks there at like 5:00. And I remember talking to this one couple and they basically were like from Birmingham, Alabama. They've driven to Birmingham, Alabama to Charlotte to see John and really made a weekend out of it. And they're like, oh yeah, we just love John and we're going to, just hang out for the weekend. But the purpose of coming to Charlotte was to see his show. And now that's happening to me. Like we had a show on Sunday, 6:00. I dropped my wife off at the club because she was doing the merch. So we set up the merch. Man, there's a couple that drove 4 hours to the show and they were out there at 4:00. I mean, the people. Also, there was this guy on Sunday that was outside and it was raining and he had like a piece of plastic on and it was big dude. And the guy, it was like, hey man, I want to support Mike, but he didn't want to come to the show. It was very strange. He wanted to support, didn't want to come to the show. So I think he ended up coming in and buying a t-shirt and bought a t-shirt. And he told my wife, because she's selling the t-shirt, told my wife his name. Well, this dude happened to be the brother of like my high school girlfriend. Like 30 years, I probably hadn't seen this guy. Like I hadn't seen him. But I was telling a comedian friend of mine, and she was basically like, oh my goodness, like these are the things that like signal life's changing. Things are shifting. Folks had a great time. I had a great time. I did 4 shows in 4 days and I was tired. But what's wild, I got to go out again this week. I got 2 shows this week. I'm in Florida. What's also is a blessing that I drove all of these dates this weekend. I'd have to fly it all. I avoided all of that turmoil that was going on in these flights with major outages, especially with Delta, because I'm down with Delta, right? And I avoided all of this. And I'm grateful. That's another opportunity to be thankful for a blessing that I wasn't trapped in the airport trying to get to these locations. I drove to these 4 venues and had a tremendous time. And it's hard. It's really hard And I'm being very deliberate to think about the blessing of it all and not focus on the offense, the email. I keep thinking about the email, and I keep thinking about how difficult it was to convince these folks to give me some dates. But now I think I have some leverage, and I have some social proof, and we have some real ticket sales proof. And I think that it's only going to get better from here. So I'm encouraged. What you're not going to do is not rejoice with those that do rejoice. And I'm rejoicing. What's really wild, and I'll talk a little bit more about this in the future, it's what I'm gonna call like the Cosby void. I just think that Sinbad, Bill Cosby, Flip Wilson. I just think we have I think as much as comedy is adult and vulgar, there's a tradition of just clean comedians, like especially black folks, man. Like, and I'm gonna celebrate that. And I'm not, I wasn't necessarily trying to wave the banner for clean comedy, because people that do me like that, people like I'm good, and people that use language is bad. I'm not that. I'm a comic. I love comedy. I think you could be a Cat Williams fan and a Mike Goodwin fan. Like, I don't judge your comedy palette, right? I just want to present a product that if you check it out, you're like, oh man, this is really great. It's like steak. Some people like filet mignon. Some people like New York strip. I just want to have my version of steak, but it's still steak, right? And people that like steak should like the steak the way that I prepare steak. So I'm not anti dirty. I'm not the alternative in my mind. And I know some people need a villain. They got to be, and I'm of the comedy community. This is just my offering to it. So if you love clean comedy, I'm your guy. Like, if you're looking for comedy without language, you don't have to worry about. We're working with this woman now about doing some PR. So I'm excited because we're really gonna take some big swings at some big media outlets, and we're talking about like uh, headphone free comedy. Like, you don't have to put the headphones on to listen to my comedy. But I'm not opposing myself. Hey, you don't like dirty? Come to me. Like, no. But I do recognize that, man, I do feel this void of like just refreshingly funny comedy. Like, just, man, people just want to laugh. Just want to just laugh unencumbered. I got an email from I got a DM from a pastor who's like, man, thanks for allowing us to have a great time without it being carnal. And I'm like, yeah, we can do that. Like, I'm your guy. Like, hey man, if you just want to come out and have a great night of laughs, I'm your guy. Like, I'm not gonna offend. I mean, a comedy is offensive, so I may say something, but that's not my intention. I'm a feel good movie, right? Like, but if you want to go see a horror film, then yeah, I'm not what you're trying to see. But if you want to watch Ted Lasso, I got the Ted Lasso going on, man. I got man. I got the Abbott Elementary happening over here, man. I'm over here with the different world and the Cosby Show. Just like, if you just want to watch something, I'm doing that now. I'm watching Veep. Now, maybe a little bit more adult than what some people uh would desire it to be. But like, there's some shows you just want to. The Office. I got the Office comedy going on over here, man. Rex Parks and Recreation. Like, man, you don't have to have the whole storyline. You don't need to all these characters dramatic. Like, I just want to tune in and, man, have a good laugh. I just want to enjoy. I want to enjoy my viewing. That's what Mike Goodwin is doing, man, with this refreshingly funny comedy. So we're gonna be talking about the Cosby void, and kind of how what's my contribution to the craft, to the culture. But thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of the Best Advice Ever podcast. Also, don't forget, we got a giveaway going on. We got a gift certificate for God Ain't Petty, But I Am. T-shirts, keychains, like she's doing all kind of stuff. Shout out to my friend Jennifer Jasper and her brand. God Ain't Petty, But I Am. And if y'all don't send in, because I told you to send in some entries, like Petty Murphy. I was petty this weekend. I did something very petty. I don't have enough time to talk about it. But send me in some entries. And if y'all don't send them in, I'm going to get the gift card and I'm going to rock the merch on the show. Just like I got on the We Are the Ones. We're waiting for this is TSP, the mastermind, the business mastermind I'm a part of. I'm going to rock the God Ain't Petty, But I Am t-shirt. So don't send it in. I get the gift card. I'm a fan. And I'm a fan too. So I'm not just the owner of this podcast. I'm also a fan. But thank y'all for checking in, man. Hope y'all enjoy the new look. I like it. It feels good. It looks good. And I'll see y'all next time, man. If you want to get in touch with me, just email me at info@comedianmikegoodwin.com. You can find me on all the social media spots, Comedian Mike Goodwin or Bowtie Comedy. Please go to mikegoodwin.com and join my email list so you can stay up to abreast of upcoming tour dates. Again, I just got, it was announced I'll be at TEDx South Lake. So that's outside of Dallas. That's in October. I'm also going to be on a comedy tour with 2 other comedians this upcoming fall. I'll give you some more information about that in the future. Thank y'all for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Same bat place, same bat channel. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with me, and I appreciate it. See you next time. Peace.